Good morning, namaste, how are you? It's Shakti here, and I'm ready to continue with our trilogy, um, lost my words, our journey through the three foundational keys to tantric lovemaking. So, yesterday I was sharing about love, and today I'm going to be sharing about sanctity, bringing the sacred into our sexual encounters, our sexual relations, bringing the sacred towards and in union with our sexuality. So, the theme of sanctity. So, of course, in line with the theme to today, but actually, I usually do this anyway because it's become so much of the way that I just operate. We will begin with a couple of things. So, first of all, when I create sacred space, I typically light a candle and or more than one candle in my space, and I usually cleanse the space. I use Palo Santo, sometimes I burn incense, but I usually do this before holding any kind of space, whether it's even online with a client. So, yeah, even when I do online sessions, I will cleanse, I will light a candle, I will cleanse the space, I will burn some Palo Santo or incense. I will tune in for some time. Sometimes it can only be like a minute, or sometimes it's longer, but I will meditate or tune in. I may call in. I work with particular archetypes and energies, and I may call those energies and archetypes in. I may tune in to my sacred sexual priestess self. I may send out a prayer, a wish that whatever happens from this point, I serve for the highest and best good. So that's one way in which I create sacred space. I'm holding that intention in my heart. Like highest and greatest good. And that's clear to show up and serve. So that's one way in which I create sacred space. Another way is I often begin my sessions by using my chimes. And for me, that just creates a conscious stepping into an intentional space. So it marks kind of a boundary between, here's my life, here's my world, there's my laundry on the line, there's my breakfast things over there, there's the chitter chatter that's been going on, all of that stuff. And now I'm creating the intention, I'm going to leave that behind. I'm going to step in with you this morning into an intentional space where I'm going to be transmitting around the theme of sanctity as a foundational piece of tantric lovemaking. That is just being in silence for a while to mark that transition, to mark that intention. To the body more deeply, and thereby noticing what is actually real and what is actually alive. Because Tantra is about being fully present in the here and now with no distraction or avoidance of what is actually going on. And when we're in our busy, busy lives with so many distractions and thoughts and busyness, we're not actually present most of the time. Tantra is about being present. So in creating this sacred space, we consciously bring ourselves into the now. Ringing the chimes, sitting in silence, noticing how we are, holding our intention, beginning to open to the unknown. Breathe more fully and deeply through the body, feeling the ground beneath you, letting your face, your jaw, your shoulders relax. This is all a part of coming into sacred space. So don't be fooled by the word sacred to mean that you're not going to be in your body. You're going to be fully in your body in tantric sacred space. Fully. Being in the body is a gateway to the sacred. Every sensory impression that is happening now. We're able to be present and open in this moment to now, the more we are touching the sacred. Because really Tantra is about intimacy, and it's about intimacy with all of life. And when we truly allow ourselves to feel life, to be right up close and personal with life without any barrier, that's already a making love that is happening. And in that making love, there is a heart opening, and there is an immediate connection with God. I'm going to call it God or divinity or source consciousness, whatever you want to call it. You're touching upon the very core of existence. Okay, so we've dived in. Today's theme is sanctity. Now I'm gonna roll with this. When you hear that word, sanctity or divinity or sacred, you may have a response or you may have a reaction. And one part of that response or reaction might be, what has the sacred got to do with sex, right? That could be a very common reaction or response out there in the world, in the mainstream in particular. Like I said, or I have shared many times before, when I tell people what I do for a living, when I tell people that I teach Tantra, very often the response is like, ooh, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, cheeky, cheeky, eh, saucy, eh? And I'm like, no. Why? What's saucy about this? It's actually about love, about sanctity, about connecting with my divine self, about self-realization and spiritual awakening. Is that saucy? But right there you kind of see the programming, the conditioning that there is, that's so prevalent, that has associated anything to do with sex, with rudeness, with naughtiness, with sin, with dirty, with bad, right? This is programming, it's conditioning, it's mind imprints, it's belief systems that are not the truth. But what that kind of thinking does, which is so much a part of religions and patriarchy, is that it divorces us from the recognition that we are ourselves divine, that we are a part of the divine that is all of life, and it separates us from acknowledging our sexuality as an inherent part of our divine selves. So that kind of patriarchal religious thinking splits us off immediately from our capacity for full spiritual opening and full sexual opening. Because of course, if you believe on any level that sex is sinful, and you know, please, I'm kind of sensing that people might be resisting this message. It's not that you're going around thinking, oh, that's naughty, oh, that's bad. Although actually, you know, it does come out unconsciously in the way in which people respond to me when I say I teach Tantra, and I get these giggles and these titters and these nudge, nudge, wink, wink, wink. Like even from really young people, like this idea that it's somehow wrong or naughty to be doing something that they think is just about sex. So of course that conveys the unconscious belief that there's something naughty and rude and bad about sex itself. But of course there's not. It's the most natural, beautiful thing in the world that creates life. So it can be very unconscious, but that belief is very definitely in the strata of social media programming, in the strata of any kind of religious programming. It's like that belief is buried very deeply in our subconscious. So if that belief is anywhere within your body-mind energy system, then of course, when it comes to being sexual and having sex, any kind of feeling of shame, fear, guilt, wrongness, naughtiness is going to block your capacity to open. Because to be able to experience the pleasure that you're capable of, and there's no limit to that, right? But to be able to open to that, you have to let go. That's like tomorrow's point is surrender. You have to be able to open fully. You have to be able to relax fully. You have to be able to trust fully. You have to be willing to be seen in your pleasure and your surrender fully. And for that to happen, there cannot be these feelings of shame, fear, guilt, embarrassment. Oh, that's a bit dirty. Oh, that's a bit naughty. Oh, that doesn't look very nice. That can't be in your psyche, because if it is, your pleasure and your opening is going to be blocked, right? Or you may be then also as a result be repressing your true desires, or thinking that there's something wrong with your desire, and so it gets repressed, it gets pushed down, it gets contracted and sat upon, and sometimes completely forgotten. Or there can be another reaction to this sort of indoctrination, really, from the church and from patriarchy, from this splitting, this idea that sex and sexuality is sinful. There can be the reverse reaction, which comes out in hypersexualization, promiscuity, sleeping around, like just going crazy, and the belief that that is being free, and the belief that that is being very liberated. But actually it's not. It's a reaction to that indoctrination. It's a reaction against being told that that very thing is sinful and wrong. So you're not actually free. You're not actually liberated. You might think you are, but you're not if you're still operating in reaction to that narrative. You're only actually free when you're not operating or acting in reaction to anything. You're simply fully plugged in to the true essence of your feminine divinity, your sexuality, your sexual energy, which is completely pure, completely innocent, and has no need to react to anything or anybody outside or external to itself. And it's a very, very different way of moving in the world as a woman when that's where you're coming from. It's not in reaction to that whole religious programming, either by going overboard or underboard, as it were. It's just a pure expression of divine feminine moving through you, a pure embodiment of your inherent lusciousness, your inherent sensuality, your inherent capacity for sublime orgasmic pleasure in every part of your body. And you're shining with that, not because you're trying to get anything, not because you need to manipulate men, not because you need to get attention, right? That's an immature shadow expression of the feminine, because that's what you are. Look at nature, look at the trees, look at the flowers. They're simply radiating. They are Shakti. That is you. But most women don't recognize that. There's nothing you need to do. There's no one you need to manipulate. There's nothing you need to do to titillate somebody else. You're just shining, right? That's what sovereign sexual woman is about. Okay. So this kind of idea of sex as sin then creates these blocks and repressions, which of course create distortions and limitations. We cannot know our full capacity sexually or spiritually when we're still holding on to those beliefs. But actually you can see the damage that they do in the very well-known virgin whore split in our thinking, which is, I guess, is what I've been talking about that really in different terms. So you become kind of hyper goody-goody or hypersexual, but either way you're in reaction. It's a splitting off, and it's very confusing actually for women who long to embody their sexual fullness but feel held back from that out of feelings of shame, fear and guilt or embarrassment. And of course, that kind of virgin whore thinking is what then creates also the distortions in the way that men behave towards women, right? All the objectification, but also all of the more dark and unpleasant stuff such as sexual abuse and rape, because that would not exist if for men if they were fully integrated with their own feminine, with their own sexual energy, if there was no thought of shame or naughtiness or badness or forbidden fruit in their minds, then they wouldn't need to repress their sexuality. And when things are repressed, they come out sideways, backwards, they come out in distortion. So that the distortions around sexuality that you see men living out are about the virgin whore split as well. It's not that men are to blame for this. It's not like I'm pointing the finger. It's this whole patriarchal belief system. And really, I can also speak from experience, really and truly, in all the years that I've been working with women. One of the number one causes of sexual trauma, sexual shame, sexual shutting down, lack of pleasure, lack of opening to true potential is directly as a result of religious programming, be that Christianity, be that Islamic belief, be that some other belief. And it's both within the bodies and the psyches of the women that I have worked with, and it's also within the bodies and the psyches of the men who have been in their lives, who quite often have been abusive or completely lacking in awareness or respect or honoring of the feminine within themselves and around them. So that's what I've seen. I'm just going to share a little bit then about my own experience, because it's relevant, totally and directly relevant. I grew up in a family which was completely atheist, but when I was a teenager, I think about 12 or 13, I developed this spiritual hunger. I guess it kind of was catalyzed around puberty, and this awakening of my sexual energy that came on board at that time as I began my menarche, my bleeding time, and discovering masturbation and self-pleasuring and all of that. And I just had this burgeoning spiritual longing that just came out of nowhere, of wanting to understand the meaning of life, of wanting to understand what it's all about. I knew there has to be more to life than this. There has to be a meaning. There has to be something. I just had this spiritual longing, and I literally walked into a church at the end of my road and converted to being a Baptist. And then from the age of, I don't know exactly when it was, 13, 14, something like that, I was a committed Christian. I was a Baptist. Nobody in my family, they thought I'd gone completely mad. I joined the Christian Union at school. My best friend was a Christian, actually. Her family were really lovely. They went to a United Reformed church. So that was a part of my life. And what that created in me was this splitting off, because in secret, in private, I was incredibly sexual. I was masturbating all the time. I was reading my dad's pornography. And that was a secret part of me. When it came to boys, I was so shy and so self-conscious and so lacking confidence. And I wasn't sexual with boys for quite a long time. I didn't have sex until I was 21 because I believed that sex before marriage was wrong. Because that's what the church told me, that sex before marriage was wrong. And when I did go into heavy petting kind of stuff, making out with a few boys, I experienced pretty much no pleasure at all. No pleasure. I just found it very embarrassing, very awkward, very uncomfortable. They didn't know what to do. I would have been mortified to tell them that I masturbated or to show them how I masturbated. It would have been, I would have been mortified. They would have been mortified. It was very awkward. They had no idea about female sexual arousal. I didn't know how to communicate that to them. It wouldn't even have occurred to me to tell them. It wouldn't have been an idea in my head to tell them what to do or to explore things. It was all shrouded in this deep embarrassment and feeling of guilt and shame. So those experiences were really awful, right? So, personally, I experienced how those religious beliefs completely contracted me in my body and stiffened me up and made me both silent, like shutting my voice down, but also shutting my body down. And of course that all changed, but that was just my experience. I actually let that faith go when I was 21 and I met my first proper boyfriend, and we dated for a whole year before we had sex, and I loved him so much that I just finally reasoned for myself that how could there be something wrong with making love with a man that I really loved and knew so well. I write about this in my book, by the way. If you haven't got it already, I talk about this in my book when I talk about Your Erotic Her Story, which is a part of my Sovereign Sexual Woman Retreat, by the way. So, that whole sexist sin thing, we need to reverse that. It's a lie. It's a way of separating us from the recognition of our own inherent perfection and divinity that includes our sexuality. It's a lie. It's a perversion, actually, right? And the irony is that people talk about sexuality and sacred sexuality as if it's perverse. The perversion is in thinking that it's perverse. That's the perversion. Right there. You see how much kind of mind control there is out there when people still believe that kind of nonsense. Right. The second reaction, so I've spoken about the first reaction that might come when we associate sanctity with sex. The first reaction could be, how can those two go together? Surely sex is sinful, right? So I've explored that. The second reaction might be, oh my God, I don't want anything to do with religion. I don't want anything to do with having to be good. I don't want anything to do with anybody telling me what to do. I don't want to have to fit into any doctrines or dogmas about right and wrong. And that kind of reaction can come from having had negative experiences with religion, or negative beliefs about religion, which is totally understandable. When, again, like I say, a lot of the clients that I see, their sexual trauma is directly linked to religion or a religious person. So I totally understand that. So Tantra is not a religion. It's not about trying to be good. It's not about getting to heaven by doing good deeds or winning merit or adhering to a particular moral code. It's not about what's good and what's bad. It's not about some people are sinners and some people are good. It's not about any of that. Tantra is a life path of recognizing the inherent divinity in all of life, in all of you, in everything. That's what Tantra is. It's about self-realization. Self-realization being the coming to recognize your true God nature, the true divine nature. It's about the experience of oneness with everything. It's about unification, the unity of apparent polarities, the masculine and the feminine, heaven and earth, sex and spirit, body and mind. code in the sense of this is right, this is wrong, this is what you have to do to get to heaven. Heaven's already here. We don't need to actually do anything. I was looking for my book. I haven't got my Radiant Sutras here right now. Otherwise I would read to you a passage from the Radiant Sutras. Again, the religious indoctrination and programming can be like, you have to fulfill certain criteria to be good enough to get to heaven. Tantra is not about that. There's no having to be good enough. It's more like, that's a lie. Let's remove that mask. Let's remove that layer. Let's come back to our essence. And when we're in touch with our essence, we recognize that we are already part of the divine. And at the same time, and this again is the irony, when our sexual energy is activated, when our sexual energy, our Shakti energy, which is the divine feminine, is activated and flowing through our chakras, flowing through our meridians, our energy body, flowing through our body, and meeting Shiva consciousness at the crown. Have I got my yab yum here? No, I haven't even got my yab yum here to show you. Then we are opening ourselves to spirit. We are having a spiritual experience that's not being given to us by somebody outside. It's not about somebody external to us. It's not about an external God. It's not about an external authority. It's not about following any precepts. It's not about striving to be better. The simple fact is that when your sexual energy is activated and flowing through your body, you will naturally, organically begin to experience spiritual awakening. So that is how sexuality is spirituality, quite simply. My experience through following this path for some time is that in the embodiment of that, free from any dogma, free from any striving to be anything but what I am in truth, not following anybody else's idea of right and wrong. There is no right and wrong. But when I am in tune with consciousness, which is regarded as the highest expression of the divine masculine, consciousness and energy, the pure form of Shakti, when these are meeting and merging within my body, right here, right now, then my experience is that there is actually a kind of natural morality, if I want to, do I want to use that word? Let's use it for now because I can't think of a better one. That does express itself through me as love and truth. But that is completely organic. It is coming from within. It is unique to this moment. So the whole pathway of sexual sovereignty is about letting go our looking outwards for somebody to follow, looking outwards for God, looking outwards for being saved, looking outwards for rescuing, looking outwards for what's right and wrong, what do I need to do? It's about turning inwards and recognizing this authority, this sanctity within yourself, this knowing within yourself, which is not coming from the mind, right? It's not coming from thinking, because the mind is heavily programmed. So it's not coming from your ego. It's coming from the consciousness beyond that. And when your sexual energy is activated and flowing and opened, the mind opens to cosmic consciousness. The heart opens to the universal heart. Your womb is connected to the pure wisdom of the divine feminine. That's where your authority comes from, not from any external source, right? Not from any conditioned thinking. Is about in being a sovereign sexual woman. already here. We just have to open our third eye to see it, and flowing our sexual energy through our bodies opens the third eye. That's really, when people talk about awakening, that's what it is. It's like, until this moment, we're going through life blind, deaf, and dumb in a way, and just living out with programming, unconscious, in this hamster wheel. And then there's a moment where an awakening happens and we see the reality, or we experience ourselves as one with the all, and that gets blown out of the water, and we begin to realize there is so much more to life than just the illusion of what we're seeing, what we're being told is going on. And that the infinite that is always there, there is so much more to life than we have been told to expect or believe. Anyway, I've gone off on a tangent a little bit. So, as I said yesterday in the opening share when I was talking about love, the reason I came to wanting to share about this Holy Trinity, as it were, is that I was meditating and reviewing my whole sexual history and wanting to tune into those moments where there had been a particularly profound experience. And so the three qualities that struck me in all of those experiences was love, sanctity, and surrender. So sanctity was the second one that came up. So now I want to speak about what does that actually mean, because it's a word, you know what I'm saying, but perhaps you're thinking, well, so how do I create that? What does that actually mean? How do I bring that into my lovemaking, or into my self-pleasuring and intimacy with myself? Because when I'm talking here, I'm not just talking about being sexually intimate with somebody else. This is a whole approach to all of life, and it includes your approach to you, to your body, to your pleasure, to your sexuality. It has to, because it always starts with you. In fact, there were quite a few women in this group. When I asked that question, I did that poll, like, what one thing would you like to enhance your sexual experience? And quite a few of you put a more sacred experience, right? So you want a more sacred experience. And so in that, I recognize you have this longing for God. You have this longing for the sacred. And yet perhaps there is still this idea that somebody outside you is responsible for that, or something outside you is going to give you that. So no, my answer is it comes from within, and it starts with you. So whether you're single or in a relationship, whether your partner's interested in this or not, it starts with you, not you kind of having a go at your partner for not being sacred enough. You have to begin to have that relationship for yourself, with yourself, first of all, right? So what does it mean? So creating a sacred space, like I did at the beginning of this live, is about consciously creating a space in which the everyday is left behind, in which you are consciously stepping in to a container, which can be a physical space or a virtual space, where you are consciously leaving behind distractions. So you're leaving behind your mobile phone. It is outside of the room and it is switched off. The television ideally is not in the room and it's switched off. The radio is not in the room and it is switched off. There is no form of social media distraction. You're in a space where you know nobody's going to come in and interrupt you and disturb you. If you've got children, book a hotel room, get a babysitter, or at least make sure it's when the kids are asleep, right? So you want to create a space where you're stepping in and you are committed to being fully present. That can feel actually very uncomfortable for most people because they're used to being distracted by chitter-chatter, empty gossip, empty conversation, social media devices, noise. way of avoiding presence. Tantra is about being present. When you're present, you're vulnerable. When you're present, everything you've been trying to avoid comes to the fore. Yes, that's what it's about, being intimate with what's real. So, no distractions. Commitment to being fully present in the here and now. So even if you're solo, even if you're going to be self-pleasuring, then you commit to being fully present to yourself. Notice. I mean, I get this too, like the urge to check your phone, the urge to do something rather than to be present to yourself. So you're committing to being fully present, and you are bringing an intention of openness, openness of heart, openness of mind, and an intention to honor the sacred in yourself, if you're with somebody else, the other, and all of life. So that is why, for example, when we begin tantric practice, we practice the Namaste greeting. Inhale and bringing the hands to the heart. Right, I'm going to talk you through this actually. So inhale, bring the hands slowly and consciously. So conscious means you're feeling. Do you feel your arms moving? Do you feel the energy, the heat, the movement in the palms of your hands? Bringing the hands consciously together. Feel the polarity between the palms of the hands as they slowly come together. You can feel the poles there magnetically, left and right, masculine and feminine. The hands come together in this symbolic gesture of union. Left and right sides of the brain, left and right sides of the body, masculine and feminine are uniting as one, greeting and meeting, merging, thumbs touching the sternum at the heart center. That is symbolic. At the heart center, unity at the heart. I bring myself together, all that I am at the heart. This is the Namaste greeting. This is how we begin tantric practice. Then, so we inhale, and then as we exhale, we bow in honoring. We bow, we bring our forehead down, so we bring our head lower than our heart, although actually when we do it, we don't normally bring our head lower than our heart, but that's the gesture. The intention is I'm coming out of my mind and towards my heart, and my third eye is coming towards your third eye. And sometimes we can do this with our foreheads touching, so our third eye meets. You can let your eyes roll up as if they're looking out through your third eye. So your physical eyes roll up and look up and out through the third eye. Exhaling to here, and we inhale, coming back up, and exhale, release our hands. And then we look at one another, opening our eyes, and we say the words Namaste. Namaste, and if you don't like those words, you can use other words, but basically it means the divine in me bows to the divine in you. So in that, we are creating the recognition that you are an embodiment of the divine, just as I am an embodiment of the divine. Because, of course, in our everyday lives, we forget that. We're busy, we're doing stuff, we get stressed out, we've got deadlines, we've got children who want dinner, we've got the washing up to do, the grass to cut, we've got a business deadline, we get stressed out, we get in our heads, we're overthinking everything, we're distracted, we're not present, we're not here, we're forgetting the sacred. So this gesture is one way of returning to the present and honoring the sacred and remembering that you are me, that you are a reflection of me, that you are an embodiment of the divine feminine or the divine masculine, right? So that's another way that we create sacred space. Oops, I've got a hair falling out. No chit chat. Right, so we also intentionally leave behind any kind of empty conversation. There is silence in the space. The only communication that we use is what is absolutely necessary for whatever is going to happen. No chitter-chatter. We have cleansed our bodies, we have cleansed our minds. So showering, literally putting oils on, putting essential oils on, so the body is a temple. We honor the body as sacred. So again, and I haven't spoken too much about this, but this is particularly relevant for women because there's so much conditioning around the body having to conform to a particular idea of external physical beauty, right? Because there's so much judgment and competition around the body, because we've been taught to objectify ourselves and believe that our value lies in how this looks, because we have not been taught that this is sacred, however it looks, whatever shape it is, whatever size it is, because we don't really believe that, because that's not the conditioning we receive, that's not the messaging we receive from the media. This whole idea that this is sacred is quite foreign for most people. But again, this is part of the tantric path, is the remembering that this beautiful body is a temple. Every part of it, your asshole, your vagina, your vulva, your breasts, your nipples, your armpits, your pubic hair, your hairy legs, your toenails, every part of you is sacred. It's created by God. It is a living expression of God. So we prepare the body temple, we wash, we shower, we bath, we massage oils into ourselves if that's what we like to do, and we cleanse our minds. So we could meditate to begin in some way to clear out the chitter chatter and to become present. I'm going to give you some examples in a minute of some of my own experiences, but I can tell you that part of creating that sacred space was that in every instance when I had a peak spiritual, sexual and spiritual experience, we had both, prior to making love, been emptying our bodies and minds out through sacred tantric and meditation practices. So we did not just go straight from, we've had dinner and a glass of wine and now we're going to bed. No alcohol, no dinner just before, but immersion in a space of mental and physical purification, clearing out through practices like yoga, tantric meditation, kundalini shaking, and all kinds of other tantric practices, which when I say tantric practice, I'm referring to ways of meditating with the body. I don't mean having sex, right? So cleansing the body, cleansing the mind, cleansing the space, which I did at the beginning, but I'm going to do again. So how do you cleanse your space? Literally, you clean it physically. So it's clean, it smells nice. You make it beautiful. You may smudge the space with sage or with Palo Santo or something else that you like to use, right? You literally, if you've never done this before, you literally get Palo Santo, sage or incense, and you literally walk around the space and you speak the words to clear the space, to cleanse it. Whatever you say can come to be. I clear this space of all negative energies. I create a sacred space as I honor all that is good. You know, whatever words you want to speak, you cleanse and clear the space. You make it beautiful. I put flowers, or I love fresh flowers. I've got roses behind me, I've got lilies on the other side of me, fresh flowers. You may create an altar with objects that are significant for you, that bring in an aspect of honoring or reverence, or that represent something significant to you. And there is time. So in a sacred space, there is time. And it doesn't have to be like a huge amount of time, but you have boundaried off time. So we're going to have half an hour, we're going to have an hour, we're going to have 2 hours, we're going to have 5 hours. But that time is boundaried. That is your sacred time, right? And you are committed to staying in sacred space in that time. Another ways of creating sacred space, and again, this can be entirely for you. You don't have to be with anybody else. Meditation, I've already mentioned. Mantra is another beautiful way to create sacred space. So mantra is sound, it is vibration, it is frequency, and when we chant mantra, we begin to attune our bodies and our energy bodies to higher frequencies. And so we begin to, it's another way of purifying the body-mind system and raising the frequency in the space. So mantra can be another beautiful way, and perhaps if this resonates for you, the invocation of deities. Now this doesn't have to be part of the tantric experience for you. It is for me, because that's where I've been guided to go through my own soul's path and soul's journey. So there are particular deities within the Tantra yoga tradition that I love to work with, but that's not necessary. But if that resonates for you, then you invoke them, you call them into the space. You may have an image of them on your altar, or you may just imagine them, and it's as simple as mentioning their names, or they all have mantras, for example. When you're sincere in your intention, there is a response from the universe. That's all you need to know. And if you don't know anything about this, it doesn't matter. You're not missing out. At the same time, you could, for example, just sit with an open heart and a pure intention and intend that angels, ancestors, guides are present with me in this sacred space of union, communion. May all that transpires be for the highest good of myself and the other. If you're with somebody else, you can have simple intentions like this. So if you're not used to this, this will require you to overcome perhaps some kind of feeling of awkwardness at first if you've never done this before. But this is what it takes to create a sacred space. Examples now of some experiences that I've had in this kind of environment. So I was talking yesterday about love and about this lover partner that I had who had no tantric training or experience whatsoever, but with whom I had probably one of the most profound sexual experiences in my entire life. So love was a huge part of that. But there was also something that brought the sacred in between us, and I taught Kundalini yoga and meditation for 10 years, and so part of that practice for me was I would always have a daily meditation practice that usually involved chanting a mantra or doing a particular movement with the mantra. A lot of the Kundalini yoga meditations are dynamic. So I was in the middle of a 40-day practice when we first met, and I mean, this is pretty awesome. He took up my meditation practice and did it with me, or he also did it on his own. It's pretty impressive because it required chanting in Gurumukhi, which is like Sanskrit. So I was chanting quite convoluted, complicated mantra in a foreign language, an ancient foreign language. And he was dyslexic. He found it really hard, but he had a go. So he was doing that meditation practice as well. And so that was another contribution to the sanctity of the space that we were in, right? So that's just one example. I'll give you another example, another lover partner that I was with at one point. I don't want to give too much away about people, but let's just say he was not in any way a spiritual person. But again, as part of my Kundalini yoga journey, I participated once a year in what's called the White Tantra experience. So White Tantra is where a group of yogis get together. In Kundalini yoga, we used to all dress in white. That's why it's called White Tantra, but it's also called White Tantra because it's working with sexual energy, but not in a sexual way, which I know if you don't understand what that means, you can get really confused. But Kundalini Shakti, Kundalini energy, Kundalini yoga is working with sexual energy. Kundalini is sexual energy, right? Synonymous. But in Kundalini yoga, we are using that energy within our bodies, sitting on our own, and it's an internal experience. That's White Tantra. In Red Tantra or Pink Tantra, that energy can be utilized and moved with between two people or in a group. That's kind of the difference. And some of the activities can be sexual, but they don't have to be, even in Pink Tantra or Red Tantra. Right. So White Tantra was a part of the Kundalini yoga practice for me every year, and it would mean going to a huge space and being with hundreds of other yogis and sitting in meditation all day long. Really intense, difficult, challenging meditations that involved movement and mantra and breath. So he came to White Tantra with me one day, having had no experience whatsoever before of this kind of thing, which was pretty amazing because it's very, very full on. It's a very intense experience on all levels, physically, mentally, spiritually, right? And we went home after that experience, and that night we made love, and for us as a couple, that was probably the most profound experience that we had had of making love in our time together, right? So that's another example. Another example, I've received tantric massage on several occasions, and again, every time that I've been the recipient in that, there is a sacred space creation. There is a stepping into an intentional space. The space has been cleansed. There are flowers. There's an altar. The therapist, I can't think of the right word right now, the person who's giving me the massage is bowing to me in respect and devotion and honoring. You know, we together open the space by meditating together and recognizing that we are now entering into a sacred practice of pure love. With tantric massage, if it's done the right way, is about channeling pure love through the hands, pure devotion. And I can also say that in that kind of environment, I have had some of the most profound experiences, like being touched by the hands of God, is how I wrote it in my journal. That just transported me to another level of blissful transcendence without even touching my genitals, by the way, just so you know that. Yeah. Another experience, participating in a Tantra workshop. I mean, I've been to loads, but this is just one example that I'm calling to mind now. In advance of that workshop, the space was cleansed with, I think that teacher used frankincense. I use frankincense as well, actually. It's really lovely. I love frankincense. So the space was cleansed with frankincense before we were even allowed to enter. The cushions were set out in a beautiful symmetrical arrangement. We all stepped in knowing that this is an intentional sacred space, taking our places. And we then began by meditating together as a group, all of us meditating through breath, through energy into the heart, connecting the earth with the heart, connecting the sky with the heart. And this went on for quite some time, and then the teacher guided us through a series of embodied awareness practices, which is all part of Tantra. So you're bringing consciousness to the present moment in the body, to sensation, to the flow of energy, to meeting, to moving. So we had gone through perhaps already an hour of this kind of practice, and then I was sitting back to back with a woman, fully clothed. It's not about sex, guys, in the way that you think. And we were circling our pelvis, our sexual energy, or my sexual energy was flowing through my body. In this environment, I suddenly kind of opened to this experience of my heart bursting open, of my crown bursting open, of tears flowing down my face, and I knew that I was making love with God. It took a sacred space for that experience to be created. I wasn't looking for it. I didn't even know that was possible. And that is something I would say to you about pretty much all the experiences I've had that have been like this. I wasn't looking for it, and I didn't know it was possible. But I was open to the mystery of the unknown. That's what surrender is about, which I'm going to talk about tomorrow. And I really hope that you're enjoying these examples, that they highlight something for you, that they transmit something for you, that you really get a flavor of this. There are so many I could give, but one final example is a yoni puja. So in Tantra, this is a practice, a ritual that we can do to connect in with the power and the potency of the divine feminine, and the recognition that we are temples and that our yoni, our sacred vulva and womb space, is a holy gateway. And it's this way around, is a holy gateway to the divine, to the sacred, to the womb wisdom, right? So I participated in a few, but this was a big yoni puja in a big space with maybe hundreds of women. Actually, it was pretty full on. And this involved, again, stepping into a sacred space and honoring a woman's, like each person had a partner, yoni, naked yoni, with offerings of fruit, with offerings of libations, with offerings of prayer, with offerings of devotion. It was one of the most profound experiences I've ever had in my life, of being opened to the power within me as a priestess, the profound healing that can transpire for a woman when her womb and her yoni are honored in this way, and the direct recognition of the immense power of Shakti. Just to see if there's anything else I want to say. Pretty much covered everything that I want to share. I'm open for questions if there's anything you want to ask, or if there's anything you want to share, or any reflections that you have, because I'm sure you've had your own beautiful experiences that are similar. If I haven't got any questions now, I feel free to put them in the comments and I will respond, because I really love interacting and supporting in this way. And I was going to include a practice, but we're almost out of time, so I'm just going to conclude with speaking a prayer that is part of my daily practice, and you can just sit and let yourself absorb it, or you can speak your own prayer, whatever resonates for you. And if the words don't resonate for you, it doesn't matter. You don't have to take anything that I say as truth. You don't have to believe anything I say. You don't have to like anything I say. Just take what resonates for you, what resonates, and leave what doesn't. Okay? So this is a prayer that I say every day because I'm initiated as a priestess of Rhiannon and goddess of love and sacred sexuality in the Magdalene lineage. And this is our prayer that I learned when I initiated with her, and so I say this every day, at least once, starting in the morning. Is coming more fully into your body, your heart, your sex, feeling the ground beneath you, the breath flowing through you, the force that is always there, flowing from below to above. Welcoming yourself through your heart, loving yourself from your heart, open to the mystery of this moment. Hands into prayer pose, or resting your hands over your heart, or if that doesn't feel resonant, then just sitting and being open. Put my hands in a gesture of opening and receiving, both receiving and offering. So this is the gesture that feels true for me right now. Love that is in and all around me. May my eyes choose to see beauty. May my ears hear the truth beneath story. May my voice be healing in action. Heart be the drumbeat of love in this world. May my hands manifest all that is good. May my dance be your energy in motion. May my feet hold boundaries, healthy and strong. And may my body open and surrender to your flow in the meeting with presence. May my mind be filled with love so that I create a world of love. And so it is. And so to conclude my sharing today, we step out of our sacred space. I chime my bells again. It's complete. Thanks for being here, beautiful ladies, and I'll be back tomorrow speaking to the final theme, which is surrender. Lots of love.